Okay, but tonight we got something really cool before the sermon. I've asked Brother Kevin Rowe to come at this time, and I've got your microphone, Kevin, if that's what you're looking for. I'm just going to wire you up with this. But Brother Kevin Rowe has come up with this idea. It's such a cool idea. I thought it was cool when I first heard about it. He successfully executed it with several other church members, and so he's going to teach us about this thing of cruise ship soul winning, okay? It's going to be good. Here we go. So just go ahead and stick that in your pocket. You do it.
Thank you. All right, so I want to just talk briefly about a Caribbean cruise mission trip that I led last month. I think they handed out an insert that basically shows the itinerary and some of the pictures from that. But basically this idea came to me because I have a desire to get someone saved in as many countries as I can, and cruises are a cost-effective way to do that. And right now there are cruises that, there's thousands of cruise itineraries that are available, and they go to all 7 continents, including every country at this year's conference, excluding Armenia. And they even have cruises that loop around the entire world, if you had so much time to do that. But basically for the North American cruises, there's basically 4 options, and I want to kind of show you on the map here. But basically there's, because you have a hub where the cruise sends out from. Basically there's one option where you can start from California side and basically do, Baja California, Mexico, somewhat of Central America within a week. But since that speaks Spanish and I don't speak Spanish, I didn't do that one. The other option is basically Texas or Louisiana. A lot of those cruises go to Mexico, Belize, a little bit of Central America. Again, I didn't choose that one. The other option is pretty much Florida, which mostly will do these upper islands, Bahamas, Jamaica, and some of the ones. You can go a little farther down with those cruises, but then you wind up having at least one day of just on the sea travel, on the sea back. So within 1 week, you would probably only see maybe 3 islands. And so we went with option 4, where if you actually fly in to Puerto Rico, which is very good because it's an American territory, you can fly there cheaply for about $300. And now you're surrounded by all these countries and all these islands, and you can basically do many islands in 1 week with very little downtime. Of course, if you had the time to do 2-week mission trips, you can do a lot of other cool things. For instance, you can actually go from California all the way to Florida through the Panama Canal and do these really elaborate things. But we were just trying to do a 1-week cruise, and we were trying to do it as many countries as possible for as cheap as possible. So, with my pretty much ideal itinerary found, which is the one that I chose, here's how it went down. So, the first day, we flew into San Juan, Puerto Rico. We got there about 2 o'clock, and we Ubered from the airport to the cruise terminal. And what's nice is that Puerto Rico is pretty much the only, Caribbean country that even has Uber access. So it was real cheap, real easy to do that. We boarded the boat pretty much like going through the TSA a second time. We put our bags in the room, and then we basically had one of our first buffets. And so a big part about the cruise is really the food, right? So how the buffet works is basically there's a buffet area on the boat that's open from sunrise to sunset, and they have distinct menus for like breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then kind of snack times in between. And they have a bunch of different stations for different types of food, right? There's like a Mexican, Indian, Italian, British, it's massive. Everything you could want is there, and then they also have like, a salad bar, ice cream, shop, bread place, drink thing, and everything's free, right? All you can eat at all times of the day, everything's free, except for like cans and bottles, you have to pay extra for that. And also every day, everything is new, right? There's never the same thing twice. So after we ate, we left the boat, because this was like our first day. We went to a local mall called Plaza Las Americas, which happens to be the largest mall in all of the Caribbean. It's the second largest mall in the Latin American-speaking world. We figured that'd be a good place to find some English-speaking people, just because it was a big mall, right? It still wasn't that easy though. But we did get one person saved in English and one person saved in Spanish. We only had a couple hours till the boat had to leave, so we went back to the boat and had our first dinner. And so there's a separate, outside of the buffet system, there's a separate kind of fancy dinner system where once per night you can sign up to this fancy, have reservations. And you're basically, you're given a menu that has like starters, entrees, desserts, and you can order as much as you want because, again, everything's free. And, some of the things we ate were steak, lobster, prime rib, salmon, beef Wellington, and we all pretty much ate an absurd amount of ice cream. But I have no regrets. So the basic itinerary for the boat's basically at each island from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., which leaves about 9 hours per day during the day, and then overnight is when the boat's going to the next one. So pretty much you wake up every morning and you're in a new country. So the itinerary that I set was pretty much from 8 to 9, we'd eat breakfast while it's arriving at port, and then we'd walk or taxi to town. 9 to 12, we'd go soul winning for about 3 hours. 12 to 2, we'd go back to the boat, we'd cool off, we'd eat lunch, and then we'd go back out. 2 to 4, we'd go out soul winning for another 2 hours. And then, 4 to 5, we'd go back to the boat, leaving a little time, you want to leave a little buffer in there. And then normally from there, we'd pretty much shower, we'd eat at the dinner buffet, then we'd relax or do maybe a recreation. And then we'd go to the fancy dinner, like a second dinner, right? Then you'd eat like your dessert at the fancy place. Then you'd go back to the buffet for the post-dessert dessert. And yeah, so we ate a lot. It was great. But because we split the day in half like that, we were able to, as needed, kind of take a half a day off. Like, oh, I'm not feeling good. I'm gonna sleep. I'm gonna sleep in, and I'm gonna start soul winning after lunch or this or that. And so we kind of alternated that. So we didn't go ultra hardcore in this thing. We probably did about 3 or 4 hours of soul winning per day. You definitely could do more. Like I said, you have over 9 hours on the island every day. But the thing is, right, the boat, everything's free, so at any point you can just go back and you don't really have to spend money in a country. You can just go get it all free at the boat, which is nice. So the next thing I want to describe is pretty much how a port city works. There's always going to be like a tourist area, which is going to be like a few blocks or streets that are just, where everyone's trying to sell you stuff. So it's not a very good idea to preach there just because all they want to do is sell you things. But outside of that, you're pretty much going to have a business area for all the locals where they shop. And then outside of that, it's probably going to be the residential area. And either of those would be great for soul winning. And now the ship can dock either directly in the tourist area or in like an industrial area where you'll have to either like walk for a half hour or take a taxi. And taxi is definitely the better option. But once you're in that tourist area, you pretty much just have to walk a few blocks in any direction, and you'll find great people to preach to. And obviously, if you're organizing the map, you should plan all that on Google My Maps, right? So the second day was our first port, which was Phillipsburg, St. Martin. And since it was our first day, we made a couple mistakes. We tried to stay out all day. We didn't kind of use that free lunch system, so we learned, right? And the second thing is we did walk. We did the far walk. We got blisters and didn't enjoy it. So, but that's how running a mission trip is, right? You have to kind of be adaptable and learn on the fly. And the other downside, though, is that because this was a Sunday, pretty much everything was closed. And I was really looking forward to St. Martin, too, because like right a couple blocks from the boardwalk is their main university. But it was all closed. We actually went and talked to like a security guard, but we weren't able to really preach to anybody. But we did some soul winning in the business and residential areas, and we got 16 people saved there. And, even I think we'd do much better on a weekday. And I think this country still has a great opportunity there. So I definitely want to come back. And we wound up hanging out just on the boardwalk and the beach, tourist area. And they were both very nice. Day 3, we went to St. John's, Antigua. And unlike St. Martin, here, once you're off the boat, you're right in the action. And so in the morning, we went soul winning in a residential area. But it was pretty much raining the whole time. So we were walking around with umbrellas. We got a few salvations in English, a few in Spanish. But we had to really work for it. But after lunch, though, we went soul winning, just like right off the boat, just a couple blocks away. And they were just surrounded by what was apparently is when all the school kids got off their off their school. So everyone was just the streets were packed with students. And kind of like what Caleb said, preaching to the students is really like a cheat code for missions, right? It's just like you're going to get a bunch of salvations. So because of that, most of us thought this was the best island on the trip, right? Brother Mark said it felt like he was back in Fiji. So we had a total of 26 salvations, most of which were in the afternoon. So on day 4, we went to Castres, St. Lucia. Now, this is another one where you want a taxi to the city. It's pretty far. But we started off in the morning, the same spot the previous Faithful Word trip went to was Derek Walcott Square. And a little background, I had my honeymoon this year in St. Lucia. And while I thought the country was beautiful, I personally thought the soul winning was kind of awful. While we were there, we had a lot of people get really confrontational about us and yell at us about eternal security. So I was kind of curious to see, is it going to be better this second time around? And unfortunately, it really wasn't. We had the same issues at this square. And, this square had, 2 different Jehovah's Witness stands set up. It had a lot of, Seventh-day Adventists we met, and just a lot of, Rastas I kept running into that I was sure were demon-possessed. And in my opinion, the Rastas are the worst of the 3. But despite all that, we were still able to get a couple people saved, including a bus driver who gave us a free ride back to our ship. And then after that, we tried different tactics. Again, if it's not working, you got to change, right? So tried a different tactic. We went to a covered market where people were just like selling produce, and we were pretty much just selling to the stall people because there wasn't that many people buying stuff. And so we had really good success there. There weren't really, I guess, heretics buying produce. So so we got a lot of salvations, are taking our total up to 21. But despite kind of a good number of salvations, most of us kind of ranked it pretty low because we all had pretty bad experience at some point or another, just people being mean to us. But the next day, though, we were in Bridgetown, Barbados, and here we took the just $2 shuttle to the city, and there's large parks, a lot of people around, and unlike St. Lucia, everyone's super friendly, and we had some really easy salvations. And we also walked a few blocks to just like a public beach, and it was really, I think a lot of us said it was one of the best beaches we've ever been to. The water was really clear, the sand was really fine, it was really warm. But because we did that, kind of on the fly, we kind of stayed out long, so we had a late lunch, we went back, and then afterward, it was kind of too late to go back out to the city with the bus, so then we just tried, we were in the industrial area, we're like, let's just try, going around to these businesses and just preaching the industrial area, and we had a couple salvations there too, so even that worked out well. So I think I'd rank Barbados as the second best island. If we didn't run into all the school, kids in Antigua, this would probably be the best island. Certainly it was, it was the prettiest as well. So day 6, was kind of our last country, was Rosio Dominica. I don't know how to pronounce it. This place, was pretty rough in general. I think also we were, with all these days in a row, pretty long days, we were pretty worn out. So we didn't really stray super far to this day either. And we stayed pretty much on the main street, which was just like packed full of people. But because of that, everyone was really busy. No one really wanted to listen to you. And, I had a lot of people that were like heckling me from across the street. I had like a lot of like Rastas would come up and like break up conversations and kind of ruin it. But we went up the street. We visited this botanical garden and saw some nature as our recreation. But because it was like, not very receptive and also it was like incredibly hot, we didn't stay off the boat for very long. It was like one of the few days we actually went to the boat like 3 times because it was just so hot. We needed the AC. So most of us would pretty much rank Dominica as our worst island. But we still had 6 salvations, and our last salvation today was kind of a really sweet woman who was just like crying the whole time, and so it was definitely worth it to us. We still enjoyed it. Day 7 was basically the one day that we had that was at sea, so we weren't on a country at all. But we tried to do, some of the things on the boat. The boat has like tons of stuff to do, and we didn't utilize, even a fraction of it. But we tried to find some of it, so we watched a few live shows, we played pickleball, we did axe throwing, we had an archery competition. And obviously there's like ungodly things to do on the boat, there's like a casino, but the boat's laid out in such a way that, you could pretty much spend the whole week and never even see that stuff, and like we didn't even go near the pool or the bars and stuff, so we didn't see like, really anything that we shouldn't. And honestly, like you're going to see more bad stuff just on the Caribbean island than you are on the boat, just because the Caribbean's known for just kind of pot smoking and drunkenness and everything else, so I guess you have to take that how you will. One of the things that I enjoyed on the boat, though, is that all the workers had name tags, and the name tags said, obviously their name, but it said like what country they're from. And pretty much the main countries they're from were India, Indonesia, Philippines, Zimbabwe, Kenya, and South Africa. So pretty all receptive countries. We didn't really do any preaching on them on the boat because they're all working, but at the last day we did hand out a bunch of YouTube cards. But one of the things I was trying to do on the boat was pretty much be able to greet everyone in their own language. So I would just try to see their name tag and try to greet them. And I have a whole list on them. But the funniest I thought was Indonesian. To say what's up, you say apa kabar, and the answer is bike. So I thought that was fun. But anyway, day 8 was our last day. We got back onto San Juan, Puerto Rico. This time we had to actually have all of our bags. So we just went to the same mall again, and we pretty much just like sat down at a table with all of our bags around. We tried a kind of new strategy. I can only speak 3 sentences in Spanish, but I would pretty much go up, use those 3 sentences with somebody. If they kind of answered them right, I'd kind of point them over, and they'd basically sit down at a table with us. Lolo would preach to them, and then they'd get saved. So we actually had 2 salvations entirely in Spanish like that. So it was a good system. We got a few more salvations there. So just as an overview, you could see some of the countries we visited were great, some, not so much. But what's great about this format is that you kind of get a little sample of each island, right? And if it's not receptive, well, the next day everything resets. You don't have to, go there again. And of course, obviously, if you find a hidden gem, then a church can transition and be like, hey, let's do a full, week-long mission trip there. And I believe, a cruise is a great first-time mission trip, either as a participant or as an organizer, because, one of the key metrics that we look for is just enjoyability. We don't want people to come, get work to the ground, and then never come again, right? We want people to become lifelong lovers of missions. And, this was easily like one of our most enjoyable and kind of luxurious mission trips. We all definitely want to go on a cruise again. And a little bit, just kind of the background, like finances, right? This is really a very cost-effective way. For the cruise itself, I paid $1,300 for my wife and I. Our flights were $300 each, and paid about $100 extra in like Ubers and taxis. So pretty much it was $1,000 per person. The Johnson family also paid the same. And I should note, obviously, if it's a little more expensive, you try to have a single cabin. They'll charge you more, so you pretty much need to book with at least 2 people. But that's really as many people as you need. And as Brother Segura alluded to earlier, a lot of people don't really realize how expensive some of these trips can be, especially in the Caribbean. Caribbean's a very expensive place, especially with like food. But here, best food that you can get, and it's all free. And you could easily spend, $1,500, $2,000 if you had to pay for everything yourself. But, here, and even if you pay that $1,500, you're probably in an Airbnb and you're probably eating, ham sandwiches. You're not eating, steak, lobster, and ice cream. So. But, obviously we're blessed to have such a generous church who on a lot of these trips has paid a lot of those expenses, but without their help, some of those trips wouldn't be financially viable just as like a solo person or 2 people, right? So maybe you go to a church that can't do all that supporting, or maybe you just want to run a trip on your own. Cruise is a great, alternate for that because it's all paid for just for one flat fee. So even, whether it's 2 people or 20 people, it's all the same price and pretty much the same way to organize it. And not to mention, I think we all personally paid for our ticket just with the food that we ate. So, the final thing is basically, I think the best thing about the cruise is that it's very scalable. I talked a lot with Raymond over the years about just the running trips and how this works. And if I was running a cruise trip and 100 people sign up, I'd hardly have to plan. But if 100 people signed up for a traditional trip, it's kind of a logistical nightmare, right? There's things like lodging. There's hotels or Airbnbs, and while Airbnbs are cheaper, Raymond's found out that if you just book too many at once, they just ban you for life. So it's kind of dangerous in that regard. And then also, for instance, rental cars. Normally with a trip like this, if you're all driving around, you need to have 1 out of 5 people more or less sign up to be a driver, and that sometimes they might have to put the credit card on the line, their insurance policy on the line, and then they're driving in an unfamiliar and maybe stressful environment, and I've done that in the past, and I've enjoyed it. I enjoy driving, left-hand stick shift and Nagaland, on the left side of the road and up. That was all fun, but now obviously not everyone, may enjoy that, and many people really don't want to be pressured into driving. So, a trip with no cars is great, and what's nice is that they drive you for you right on the boat. And finally, obviously food's a big thing. I know, Raymond, for instance, on a couple trips has kind of spent a whole trip just buying food and transporting it to all the different Airbnbs and hotels and stuff, and never really had a good chance to go soul winning. And I think that's not ideal. I like just leaving all the logistics to the cruise line and just enjoying kind of a stress-free but fruitful mission trip. And obviously, it's not going to replace traditional missions, but I think it's a good way, especially if you're just starting out or you just want to try something and have very stress-free, and not have to deal with all the kind of admin work that sometimes running a mission trip does, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that you don't really see. So kind of in closing, right, I think that, I just hope you guys would consider, this kind of new style of mission trip. Obviously I'm going to keep doing them. Probably the Johnsons are going to keep doing them. So hopefully you guys will come with us. So otherwise, thanks. God bless, right?
Yeah, I think it's such a great idea. It's tailor-made for our philosophy around here of common sense missions and just the way it works out. And I mean the price. I mean $1,000 a person. It's pretty hard to plan a missions trip for less than $1,000. I mean, and so that's incredible. And I mean, do the math. They got 80 some people saved. Right? 5 people go out there for a week, get 80 some people saved. That's incredible results. And I like the idea of kind of sampling all the different mission fields, and then later you could send a big group to the good ones and whatever. And I really love what he said about how, people that are in, say, an old IFB church where, you're buying tracts to hand out even locally. They're selling you the tracts. Nothing's free with the old IFB, if there's ice cream after the service, you're paying for it, And so the thing is, if you're going to that type of a church where, let's say you're going to an old IFB church, you could literally just get together with a buddy. You and just a couple of dudes could just be like, hey, let's get a week off from work. We both got $1,000. You could do this. And it's like no excuse not to do a DIY mission trip. I think it's great. And you could get 4 people, 2 people, 6 people. It's scalable, like he said. You're not going to be like, whoa, there's too many people coming. And I've been to these ports. I've never been on a cruise, full disclosure. So I don't know what that's like. Sounds great, though. But I've never done it. But I have definitely been to these port cities because I've been on soul winning trips where the ship is right there. And I see the people kind of getting off the ship and getting on the ship. And so I know exactly how these cities work. And like he said, you literally walk like 10 minutes and you're out of the tourist area and you are in that country and you are deep into that country after walking for 10, 15 minutes. And it's like 2 different worlds where everybody's poor, it's all the locals and whatever. You just get out of that tourist zone. But 99% of the people on the cruise, they're staying in that tourist zone. I've always found that getting out of the tourist areas is a more authentic experience anyway. Like whenever I travel to other countries, I'm actually more interested in kind of getting the real life than just seeing a bunch of like, I want to say Sehenswürdigkeiten. I never can think of a good word for that in English, Anzo. The sights, I guess you could say. And so I always want to, see the real stuff. For me, it's so much more fun to go sit in someone's living room in a foreign country and kind of experience their house and their life and their family and eat a home-cooked meal is way cooler than just, hey, let's go look at, Mount Rushmore or, the pyramids or whatever. And so I love this idea. I hope that people online are listening to this. I hope that you guys are listening to this and realizing how this is something that you could probably successfully execute with a week off work and, $1,000, maybe $1,500, and you could really have a lot of fun and probably get a bunch of people saved and do valuable recon that you can then tell us about and tell other soul winning churches about and tell us which islands are good, which ones are dead. That information is gold. So thank you very much, Brother Rowe. Really appreciate that. But the other thing I took away from the conference, of course, was this idea of the cruise ship style missions trip. Okay, and look, I'm not going to lie to you. My whole life, I've always thought that cruises were stupid. This is not like a doctrine or anything. It's just like me personally, I'm just like, pfft. Whenever I saw cruises advertised, I'm like, whatever. I don't need that. I'm not interested in that. But I'm not going to lie. Now I'm like, I want to go on one of those cruises and go on one of these trips. Like I never thought I'd become like a cruise guy or something, And I've still never been on one. But, when I heard about this idea, many months ago. I loved it. I thought it was awesome. And then seeing it successfully be executed and hearing about it, I'm super stoked about this. And I think this is one of the highlights of the conference is this idea of this cruise soul winning. And if you didn't get to hear this, it was on Friday night, so you could go back and get the recording and listen to Brother Kevin explain that on Friday night. But I'll just briefly tell you, is the idea here is you get on one of these cruise ships that stops at a different port every day. And you can literally go soul winning in a different country every day. So these Caribbean cruises will hit like 5 or 6 different ports in 1 week. And these are English-speaking, poor, receptive countries. Now, look, when you get off the boat, you're in some tourist area and whatever, and everybody's trying to sell you something. You literally walk for 10 minutes. You don't even necessarily need a vehicle every time. You walk for 10, 15 minutes, and boom, you are in another country. You are not in the tourist zone. You're seeing everyday people. Many times, they are the most receptive demographic because the Caribbean often be like that. And so you go to each port, and I mean, they put in a port for what do they give you, like 10 hours typically, 12 hours? About 10 hours typically, right? So it's like, okay, you got 10 hours at this port. Think about what you can do in 10 hours, right? You can easily do a few hours of soul winning, take a leisurely break, have lunch, buy your souvenirs, take your photos, do a couple more hours of soul winning. I mean, so much time. And it's just like we just waste so much time in our lives, right? But if you really look at time as a commodity and say, okay, I got 10 hours, and you plan it out, man, you could do a ton. You could literally even get a taxi if you wanted to and go to a town an hour away. You got 10 hours. You could literally go to a place an hour away, do soul winning for a few hours, eat the meals, have the fun, take the pictures, come back. I mean, look, you could do a lot. And the cool thing is, hey, if the country's unreceptive, no harm, no foul, because we're going to be somewhere else tomorrow. You're getting all kinds of great recon because you're finding out which countries are good for soul winning, which Caribbean islands are good for soul winning. Because in the Caribbean, like sometimes every island's like its own country, you know. So you hit each of these places, you figure out which ones are no bueno, you figure out which ones are receptive, you're doing recon, you're getting people saved, and you're having fun because you're getting wined and dined, not literal wine unless you're talking about grape juice, amen? But you're getting wined and dined on the ship, and you're enjoying the relaxation of what the ship has to offer, and then you're also doing all this work for the Lord, and the cost is incredible. I mean, they talked about it on their trip, it ended up costing like $1,000 a person. When you're going 2 by 2, where you can bunk up 2 people to a room, that's usually how they try to sell these things, is like to 2 people. You could get the flight and the cruise out the door. You could do this trip for like $1,000, okay? And so if we think about, you know, just to kind of maybe abuse your math a little bit, but, you know, there were 5 of them on this trip, and he said it was like about $1,000 a person or whatever. So let's just say $5,000, and they got like approximately 90 people saved for $5,000. That's like $180 of salvation. That's incredible. Think about that. I mean, is my math wrong? Somebody help me out. I might have just had a big math fail. I might be, is my math right or wrong? What's that? Oh, I screwed up. It's $55 of salvation. I'm up here lying about this, okay? So it's, yeah, so it's what, $5,000, 90 salvations. It's been a long week. $55 of salvation? Okay, well, that's even better. Who cares, man? I'm sorry about my math fail. But either way, it's a good deal. But think about this, man. I think back to when I was 18 years old. I saved up a couple grand when I was 18 to go do missions in Germany and everything. But keep in mind, like a couple grand back then would be like probably $5,000 now or $6,000 now. You know, think about how just some young people, guys in their 20s, single guys, whatever, you know, a couple guys could team up on something like this. And I don't care if they're going to an old IFB church. I don't care where they're going to church. They could team up and do an incredible missions trip like this. And they could really be greatly used by God. And so the possibilities are endless. I mean, even, and I was thinking about this, families could go. Because you could literally have the women in the, you know, you could have the women on the ship taking care of the kids. The guys go out soul winning for a few hours. And then if it's a safe place, you could even trade off and then have the guys take care of the kids, send the ladies out soul winning for the afternoon session while the dudes are chilling out. I mean, this could work. The possibilities are endless because it's not just the Caribbean. I mean, this could work for the South Pacific. There's a cruise that goes to like Tuvalu, Fiji, Vanuatu, all these places. But even I was thinking about, there are Mediterranean cruises. There are cruises that hit various islands of Greece and things. There are cruises in Scandinavia. There are cruises in South America, Latin America. I mean, if you're a Spanish speaker, there are all kinds of cruises that hit all these Spanish-speaking ports. You know, you can think about Africa. I mean, the possibilities are endless. I was thinking about, what if like 100 people just decided to jump on this idea in 2025, right? What if 100 people who are hearing about this online, in our church, what if 100 people decide, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot? Imagine how we could literally get people saved in just scores of countries and get people out there having fun, winning souls. I mean, I think it is such an incredible idea. And so I'm pretty excited about it. But maybe you're here tonight and a good action for you to decide to take is to go on a missions trip some point if you can. Or organize your own. And like I said, I would love to see this happen, and I'm going to pray for this. I'm going to pray that 100 people will get excited about that cruise ship idea and get out there and hit these port cities and just absolutely just rock them with the gospel and just hit them so much that you're going to have to start taking a cab because the local area has been hit so many times. Right? The Caribbean just gets hit so many times. It's going to be like, yeah, go to that island in the Caribbean, but be sure you take the cab 45 minutes away because everything by the port there has been hit because so many people heard that about that lobster and steak and 5 desserts or whatever and got all pumped up about it. Man, I would love to see people grab hold of this idea and experiment with other areas like the South Pacific. Find out where are the cruises that are hitting English-speaking, receptive port cities and experiment. And I would love to get emails throughout the year of 2025, emailing the church saying, all right, we did the recon. Here's what we did. These are the cities we hit. These are the places that were receptive. Look, I would love to even just get an email telling me this place sucks and I'm never going back because then I can just be like, check it off our list. Don't go there. And so I would love to see you tonight, whoever you are, here locally, listening online, to decide to take action. Learn how to soul win, get involved locally, or if you're already involved locally, decide that you're going to stay plugged in, stay faithful, set yourself a standard of, hey, I want to keep going, I don't want to miss, or get involved in a mission trip, or even organize your own mission trip. Look, we are not control freaks around here, okay? Pastor Anderson is the biggest non-control freak in the world, okay? I barely even tell my staff what to do. They have to ask me what to do because I don't even tell them. Okay? And what do I mean by that? Is that we don't have this attitude that says like, you got to go on our program and we got to organize it and we got to sanction it and you got to, look, we have people in our church all the time. They just organize their own mission trips. They just organize their own soul winning trips and they have our blessing. They don't have to get permission to get a bunch of guys together and just go to some place and do soul winning missions. So look, obviously the church is going to organize you and send you places and stuff. But you know what? You have my permission to organize your own stuff and just get together with other people in the church. And nobody's going to stop you from going soul winning anytime, anywhere, unless people are in there. Right. That was Brother Segura taught us. I was just seeing if you were listening. All right, let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this great conference, Lord, all the wonderful things that we've learned. And Lord God, we just pray that everyone is inspired. I know that a lot of people have been inspired this week and are excited. That's why we put the conference on. And Lord, if people come out of this conference excited about soul winning locally and excited about going on mission trips, then our conference was a success because that was the goal. And Lord God, I pray that you would continue to stir in hearts even as people maybe go back and re-listen to certain sermons or maybe new people listen to them online in the coming weeks. I pray that these sermons would light a fire in the hearts of people, that they would go out and do great works for you in the year of 2025. Lord, bring us back safely next year so that we can rejoice about the great works of 2025. And in Jesus' name we pray, amen.